everyone, welcome to another virtual farm tour. Today I'm starting out in our workshop because I have something very exciting to show you. Lizzie is also here with me as she's going to take a nap, maybe while I'm showing you what I have. Earlier today in the mail, I received my package that I've been waiting for just for a couple of days. What I got shipped are some live embryo fertile hatching eggs. So you're able to ship hatching eggs in the mail. They just ship through Canada Post, just like a letter. You can also ship baby chicks, and they're sent the morning of, and they get delivered right to your post office, and we've done that before through Rochester Hatchery. But this time I got some hatching eggs. They are Ridley bronze hatching eggs. They are turkeys from Forest Gate Heritage Farm in Christopher Lake, Saskatchewan. And so they come packaged like this. There's lots of labeling telling the shippers that what's inside is very fragile. So once we open them up, and the lady I purchased them from did an amazing job of making sure that the eggs are staying nice and secure as they've been shipped. I opened the box up while I was at work because everyone was excited to see what I had, and I was as well. So they're packed with lots of shredded newspaper, and then inside I have 18 turkey eggs. So I've opened up one of them, and they're packaged very nicely as well. So hopefully I can find the one that I opened up because they're nicely wrapped, and I want to keep them wrapped for just a little bit longer. So this is a turkey egg. So all eggs share the basic principles, being fairly round, have a pointier end, or have a more rounded end. This is what a turkey eggs looks like. So they're light brown, nice shape, and they've got some light speckles on them. So if you've noticed in some of my earlier videos, you will have seen a turkey strutting around. That turkey is also a Ridley bronze. And so these chicks will hopefully grow up and look just like that, at least the males will. The females are a little bit more nondescript and not quite as flashy, but that's important for when they are sitting on their nests and incubating their eggs. So the Ridley bronze turkey is a breed that is Canada's only surviving heritage breed, and they were developed in 1940s. By J.H. Richardson of Saltcote, Saskatchewan. And so we'll switch back. Heritage turkey breeds or any kind of heritage poultry are anything that was developed right before the 1900s or at the beginning of the 1900s. So anything that's developed after that is considered a more modern breed. And what makes heritage breeds, especially in turkeys, really interesting and really important is that they're able to breed naturally because their breastbones and also are smaller. So that allows them to breed naturally, where any of the broad-breasted turkeys, any of the kind of turkeys that you're going to be purchasing in stores, or any of the commercial turkeys, they're not able to breed naturally. So that all has to be done with the assistance of a farmer or the turkey keeper. So being able to let the turkeys naturally breed and reproduce is really important, and it's something that I'm very excited about, to finally have some Ridley bronze turkey eggs. I had a female a couple of years ago, and she decided to go lay her eggs in some secure spot, and unfortunately she never came back. So I have the one tom currently, but I wanted to get some more eggs or even some poults, so baby turkeys. So I was lucky enough to find this lady, and she shipped them to me very quickly. So I have the 18 eggs, and what you do when you get shipped eggs, in case anyone is watching and is maybe interested in that, the eggs will be shipped to you quite quickly. Call your post office or whoever your shipper is and tell them that your eggs are coming, and go and pick them up right away so they're not exposed to any cold or any additional heat. You want to keep them in a cool, dry, temperature-controlled place that is not going to experience any bumping or moving. You want to keep the eggs in a very secure spot. And then after they've been shipped or after you've picked them up, let them sit for at least a day or even up to 48 hours to allow the eggs to settle. Because as they're being shipped or moved across the country or the province, the eggs will start, they kind of get scrambled, not to that point obviously, but everything kind of gets a little bit mixed up. So let the eggs settle and just let them sit before you put them in the incubator at least a day, up to 48 hours, and then you can put them into your incubator, and then you're ready to go and you can hatch them. So turkey eggs take up to 28 days. They're kind of in the same realm as ducks. They take a little bit longer than chickens, but not quite as long as geese. So I'm waiting on a new incubator, so I'm going to let these eggs just sit and chill in our shop, and they can do that for up to a month. I'm hoping I don't have to leave them that long, but you can. The duck eggs that are under my goose right now, they were sitting just in a chicken house. Nothing fancy was done to them. They were just left in a little corner, and they had been there for up to a month, some of them, and they're developing, and they're looking really good right now. So I'm not worried about leaving the eggs for a while. As long as they're not disturbed or moved or exposed to any extreme heat or cold, they'll do just fine, just sitting in a good spot. So that's what the eggs look like, and I'll actually show them to you again for anyone who just tuned in. And so very excited about our new incubator, and I want to thank our neighbor who's actually lending me hers right now. So that filled with some chicken eggs, because our old one, which is close to 20 years old, finally decided to call it quits. So we're getting a new one, very exciting. So we have 18 turkey eggs total. So I will put these in as soon as our new incubator arrives. I was also thinking I might put them under the geese, but just because things are a little bit more casual out there with the geese incubating their eggs, I want these to be very controlled. I want to be able to monitor these eggs fairly regularly, where the geese are constantly moving around or the females are switching nests. So I don't want there to be a lot of disturbance or changes in what's going to happen to these eggs. So if anyone is looking for hatching eggs, there are a lot of groups on Facebook or online that you can check out. A lot of them are done auction style, so there will be a minimum bid of what the dozen or the 18 or maybe the 2 dozen eggs are going to be, and then you can bid in different increments. So a lot of times it'll be increments of $2 or $3, and it's a really fun way to get started with poultry, is just starting from some fertilized eggs. We're going to leave these here. We're going to wake up the dog. Lizzie, come on, let's go. She quite enjoys having her afternoon nap. So we're also going to pop out and we're going to take a look at the greenhouse really quickly. Come on, Liz. So we're getting everything landscaped and ready to go for the garden. So we're going to be planting corn and carrots and onions and beets, peas, beans. There are many more things, and I can list them all below, but the garden is what my mother really enjoys doing, my mom and dad, so they're busy working here. They've just rototilled everything and added a new little walkway with some gravel that just got put in this afternoon. Potatoes, cabbage, all sorts of things, pumpkins, I think some cantaloupe and some watermelons. So we have our little garden tractor, so this is the smallest of all of our tractors, but it works really well for the garden. And this greenhouse was built last year. We started it a little bit later than we intended to, but it was purchased from a greenhouse builder in BC. It's really lovely, and it's a nice addition to the yard. And the rest of this yard, where it looks like grass in the background, it's a mix of grass and alfalfa. So this used to be one of our hay fields. And this is where we have our new house. We also have a lot of shelter belt trees. So we got these trees as part of the Prairie Shelter Belt program that was started in Saskatchewan. Unfortunately, it's no longer running, but for the longest number of years, every Mother's Day, we would go out and we would plant thousands of oaks and some poplars, as well as some oak trees. So they've grown very well in this part of our farm, and they're all starting to leaf out and bud out and look really gorgeous. This is a new view of our farm. So this is the pathway we kind of take every day to go and feed the animals. And I just remembered that I forgot the milk for the lamb. I had mixed it up and I set it outside so I could show everyone the eggs, and I got excited about the eggs and I forgot the milk. So we're just gonna run back and grab it since I left it on the step, because we will go and feed Rosie, our bottle lamb. And we'll keep going back to the yard after our quick detour. So it was a beautiful day this morning. I know it was lovely first thing, and then it got a bit cooler in this afternoon, but right now it's quite lovely. The leaves are all looking low spots on a part of our farm, and so we actually got a permit and we go. I apologize if there was a delay in the connection. I had over at the house, I had the Wi-Fi, and then it was trying to still connect to the Wi-Fi, but now I just turned it off, so we're just using up data. So this is the backside of the yard that we normally see. And we have these two bigger boxes right here. The one on the left-hand side is actually brand new. Dad just built it yesterday. He used one of our greenhouse packing crates. So the greenhouse came in a number of boxes, and this is one of them. So the perfect size, really, and we just kind of retrofitted it. We gave it some hinges, we put in some chicken and stucco wire, and we made it into another little chicken crate. So the second one of my broody hens hatched out her chicks. She also hatched out 7, so that seems to be the lucky number for my chickens. So we have 7 chicks, and we can take a look inside. So we have the chicken wire, which is the bigger wire, on the outside, and then the stucco wire on the inside. And the chicken wires, it has more strength to it, so it's stronger, and it's fine for adult chickens. But then we use the stucco wire for the chick safety, because they are so small, they can fit right through the chicken wire. We also have a taller base to these than you might need for anything else. So you can see it's a little bit higher up here. That's to prevent anything on the outside from trying to reach in to get the chicks. Because the chicks are so small, they won't get to, they're not able to really see through that side. So there's no worry or concern that something will get to the chicks in that way. Once the chicks get to the point where they can see over the window, they're big enough to be outside, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So we have the hinges. We just used an old tarp strap that wasn't usable anymore. It was broken on the one end. And we have it reinforced here on the sides just because the box was a little bit flimsy. And then in here, we have our mother hen and her 7 babies. So the chicks all fit nicely underneath the hen, and these chicks are all quite young. So they're pretty tiny, and they're not going to be doing much of exploring or moving around at the moment. They'll spend most of their day underneath the hen, but they'll peck around and eat some of the grass and any bugs that they find. And I just moved them in here, so I didn't have time to give them any water or food yet before the video, so I'll be doing that right away. And she's pretty calm and content. And you can see the chicks are all just lying pretty motionless, so that's their defense mechanism. But we'll go check on the other chicks in the other little chicken crate, which my dad also built. So my dad is a journeyman carpenter. So in addition to farming, he builds quite a few things, and so all of the buildings here he has done himself. Started from the concrete all the way up to the actual walls and sides of the buildings, to the steel on the outside and the roof and rafters. So in here are the chicks that are now just under a week old, so they're quite a bit more active. And I move their pen around so they get fresh grass each time. And this hen is quite a bit more feisty, but that's good to see. That means that she'll protect her chicks very well. And the hen will scratch around at the ground and the grass, and that'll kick up any insects or bugs. It'll also expose any grains that might be hiding underneath all the material. And when she gets really excited about something or has found something that she thinks the chicks will enjoy, she'll cluck really loudly, and they'll all come flocking to her face, and they'll come and see what she has found for them. And you can see on some of the chicks, they're already starting to develop their feathers. And I'll see if I can grab one. They usually like to stay all the way at the back of the pen, so it gets a little bit tricky to sometimes grab one. But then we can see the feather development on them. So the chicks start developing their feathers pretty much right away, as soon as they've been hatched. They're very tiny in terms of the feathers that they do have. But they only keep their sort of cute, adorable down for a few days, sometimes only a few hours. Oh, mama. So you can see the hen is quite unhappy that I've taken her chick. She can hear the baby on the outside and is not so much of a fan of it. So you can see how their feathers are growing. These outer feathers, the longest ones, those are going to be their primaries. And then you're going to have your secondaries that get a little bit closer to the body of the chick. And so as I'm holding the chicks here, you can see that they're the cats in the background. So even though our cats are really good with our adult birds, we have to be careful that the chicks are not exposed or get in the way of the cats. The dog is fine. I don't worry about her at all with the chicks. But the chicks are quite small and are very similar to something that they would naturally hunt. So we keep the chicks and the cats very separate. Lizzie. And the chicks are very calm when you're holding them, as long as you hold them with firm pressure, not too tightly, but not too loose. They'll feel secure, and this one has stopped cheeping, so clearly it's all right. But they do appreciate once they do get put back with the mother hen. And at this point in the chick's age, depending on the breed, some of the chicks you are able to tell the sex or tell the gender as soon as they've hatched. But most of the time, you aren't going to know whether they are a little pullet or a little cockerel until they get much older and their feathers and their combs have started to develop more. So until that time, they're just chicks, and not quite sure whether we have males or females, but that's okay. It's usually about a 50-50 split. You do definitely hope that you have more pullets than you do males, because the more males, you can't really do as much with them as you can with the females. So we're going to put this chick back. Try and do it with fewer hands. There we go. So you can see the mom will come right up to me, make sure her chick is okay. There we go. Lock this up. We have latches on here just in case there's a strong wind that blows, or sometimes when the sheep or cattle get out, they'll knock these and push them up. So having a little latch on here prevents anything from happening or getting into the chicks and the hen. We're now going to go and feed Rosie. She was out for quite a while yesterday, actually helping with building that other chicken house. It was more sort of following us around as we moved around the shop and the outside buildings. And she's getting to the point where she can almost jump out of her crate. But we're still waiting for our other ewes to have their lambs before we can put her in with them. Okay. So this is Rosie. This is our bottle lamb. And she is, we've had her now, I think, for 2 weeks. And she's been growing rapidly. We feed her about 6 times a day. We'll have different people feeding her throughout the day depending on who's around the yard. She's very energetic and she's trying out a lot of different things. She jumps off any pallets or the buckets of the tractors that she can, just something that gives her a little more height. And because she's the only thing of her size, she enjoys being around the cats, as well as lots of exploring. So right now she's in the bucket of one of our industrial loaders. And she spent quite a bit of time in here yesterday because we had one parked next to the front of the shop where we were building the chicken crate. So it was raised a little bit, so she had a great time jumping in and out of it. And that's an important thing for sheep and goats to do when they're young. It's practicing a lot of the skills that they're going to need later on in life. Not necessarily so much tame sheep or domesticated sheep or goats, but it's really important for wild sheep and goats to be able to maneuver steep cliffs and rocky areas of their habitat. So that's something that the domesticated animals have carried down from their wild ancestors. So all the jumping and playing looks like a lot of fun and games, but it serves a very important purpose in their development and their growth as they get older. So we have the turkey in front of us. So we talked a little bit about the turkey eggs, and I'll grab some pictures of those when I get back and unbox the rest of them. But this is a Ridley bronze turkey tom. So this is a mature tom. So you can see his beautiful iridescent feathers. Right now it's hitting the light perfectly, so it's what some people would call beetle green. So if you think of beetles or any kind of insects that have a hard, shiny shell, they usually have some iridescent colors that come off, whether that's purple or green or blue. And so that's what the tom turkeys, so the male turkeys of this breed, will showcase. As he moves into the shade, that iridescence is still visible, but not quite as brilliant. So he's the only turkey that I have at the moment, and so that's why I got those other eggs, so hopefully I can increase my flock of turkeys. They are a heritage breed. They are Canada's only surviving heritage breed, so a breed that was developed in Canada, in Saskatchewan. So a lot of people are quite intrigued when they come and visit. Also maybe a little bit cautious of the turkey because he can be quite friendly. And he does recognize when visitors come, and he'll come up and parade around you like he is right now. So kind of showing off and letting you know that this is his territory, or this is his yard. So he'll fan out his tail, he'll scrape his feathers along the ground, and he'll also kind of make some puffing or some rattling sounds. And this is all behavior that he would do if there was a female turkey around as well. So the turkeys also have a lot of really decorative features on them as well. So that really long piece of skin that he has hanging down his beak, that's called a snood. Only the males have that. And then he has the feathers at the front, which there is a proper term for them, and I can't remember it at this very moment, but it's that wiry bristled part that kind of looks like horsehair. And so that's also a decorative feature. It doesn't have any practical use, or none that is known to people. But for him, that's it's all about who has the most brilliant features. And definitely, if we had some females here, he would win them over because he is quite a good representation of his breed. He's quite lovely. And with heritage turkeys, so turkeys that are not commercially bred or are hybrids, their lifespan is a lot longer, and it'll take them a little bit longer to reach maturity in order for them to breed. So this turkey I have is already 2, going on 3 years old. So most turkeys that are farmed commercially or are of that broad-breasted hybrid breed don't last that long. So they grow so rapidly that they aren't able to sustain that growth. Whereas the heritage varieties that grow a little bit slower, take a bit more time, and kind of stop growing once they reach their maximum growing capacity, they just kind of slow down and they maintain that size. So the turkey's just kind of getting further away from me, but you can see all the way to the trees. So our poultry, whether it's the chickens or ducks or geese, are able to move around the yard as far as they would like. For the most part, they don't go any farther than where this turkey is. So we have the turkey over here, and then we have most of the buildings over in this area. So they really don't go further than where he is right now. And that's just all where they deem safe. So anything further than that could pose a risk to their safety, whether there are aerial predators or ground predators. We do have the dog around. There's always lots of activity with people around, so we never really have to worry constantly about our poultry or other animals. but they kind of put a limit on themselves as to how far out they're willing to go. So you can see we have the turkey, we have the cat, there's another cat, the dog, Rosie, another cat. All the way at the back we have the geese. So everybody kind of lives in harmony. There's Rosie up by the turkey. And we're all going to go for a little bit of a walk now. We're going to go check on our sheep, so our ewes, our female sheep who are close to lambing. I know I've been saying they're supposed to lamb any day now or any week, but they're still kind of holding on. None of them have lambed yet, but they're getting very close. We're able to see the lambs moving around inside the ewes, so if we watch carefully, we can see movement of the lambs kicking, and usually because there is more than one, it's easy for them to move around a lot and kind of switch positions because they're dealing with a lot of legs, and that can kind of make for a difficult living situation for the time being. So checking on the ewes is becoming more regular. It's the same kind of thing that we do for the cattle, just a bit more scaled down in terms of their actual size and the amount that we have. We have 6 ewes. 6 bred ewes at the moment. So the scale and the size of our flock is much smaller than it is in comparison to the cattle. And most of our ewes go into heat all at the same time, and because it is a smaller number, the ram is able to breed them all very quickly, so they will all have their lambs in a fairly short time frame. So I wouldn't expect lambing to go more than 2 weeks, and even that might be a bit long in terms of when they'll all have their lambs. So you maybe just caught that giant leap by Rosie. So you can see she's kind of flexing her muscles. Everything is really exciting. She also saw these other sheep for the first time the other day. So they were all quite interested in her and she was interested in them. But because she does not belong to any of them, they're not really receptive. And that's one of the things that is common in most female animals, is that they aren't willing to be friendly with anything or any babies that aren't their own, because those babies have the potential to take away the resources, so for the most part milk, away from their actual offspring. So even though they haven't had their lambs yet, they're not going to be a huge fan of Rosie. Once they do have their lambs, and we put Rosie in here with them, everybody will just kind of blend together and they'll get along a bit more. So you can see all the ewes are looking at her right now. And in our last video, we were able to see some of the lambs move around on camera, so that was very exciting. You can see the ewes' udders are getting very full, and their udders start to fill more as they get closer to lambing. So that ewe is getting very close, since her udder is almost at its capacity in terms of fullness. So right now we can see some movement from this ewe from the behind as we're looking at her. But for the most part, that's just her breathing. I couldn't see any actual lambs moving around in there. And all of our ewes were recently sheared, so my brother Alexander did the shearing. And he still has to shear the ram, who's in with the horse, and then we have our 2 wethers, so the castrated rams, or they are castrated rams. When sheep are born, you either have ewe lambs or you have ram lambs. So the ewe lambs are the young females and the ram lambs are the young males. As they get older and mature, you will get ewes. So your ewes are your mature or your adult females. Your rams are your adult breeding males. And then your wethers are your castrated males. So they're the gelding version of sheep, or if you have a neutered dog or a cat, that is the same practice that is done for those sheep. And in cattle, those are called steers. In horses, that's called geldings. And so this is one of our wethers. So you can still see he has his wool on. And the reason they still have their wool on is that they're not a priority right now to get sheared. Alex will do it as soon as he has time, so hopefully this weekend. But it's not as vital that we get them done as quickly. The ewes, it's important that we shear them right before they lamb, since it makes the process of nursing for the lambs much easier. That way they don't have to try and find their way through all that wool. And then it makes for a cleaner birth if we have to assist the ewe. So the wethers can just kind of hang out in their wool for now, and they'll be fine. Because they are white, the heat reflects off them fairly well, even on the hot summer days. And they have lots of hot water, or they have lots of water to keep them from getting too hot. And they have shade and other things that help to keep them cool. So they can go through the summer with all their wool on. It's just preferable that they don't. So hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll finally have some lambs to show you. All these ewes are getting very close. And for the most part, they will have at least twins. Some of our ewes do have triplets, and some have occasionally had quadruplets, so they'll have up to 4 babies. But usually twins is the ideal number. And until they have their lambs, they'll be in this pen, so they have their hay, but they're not eating much of it since the grass is starting to grow in their pen, so they've been enjoying that. Sheep are also excellent at weed control and management, so if there's any areas of our farm that have some weeds that we maybe want to get rid of, sheep are an excellent resource to use for that. And there are actually programs in the city of Calgary where they use sheep as weed control and management. It's a great way for the sheep to get out and get some new forage, because a lot of times those weeds are something interesting and new for them to eat. They'd rather be trying some different grasses or weeds out rather than having to eat the same thing all the time. And it's also a lot better for the environment rather than using a lot of pesticides and fungicides, something that can be a little bit something that's not as healthy for the ground and for the soil as well as the water. So using the sheep is an excellent natural resource, something that they do very well. Rosie's out here. She's kind of nibbling at the hay. She can see the other ewes are doing that as well, so she's going to give that a little test. She didn't really have much for milk, but she did get fed a little earlier, so I wasn't expecting she would drink the whole bottle. But she'll kind of nibble on the hay, see what it's all about. As the lambs start to get older, they'll eat more hay, and we'll actually find them all in the feeder and they'll be munching away, but they won't do that until they're a couple of weeks old. And in this pen, we also have our rock pile. So this is where we put any of the rocks that we collect from our fields, because as we're going through our fields, we want to try and have as few rocks as possible, because if you get a rock through any of your machinery, it can cause a lot of damage, a lot of time, as well as cost. So we try and make sure that we have our fields clear of rocks. So any that we find go into this pile, and so it's actually a great place for the sheep to be in. So this is their pen. It's great for their hooves. It helps to wear down the natural growth of their constantly growing hooves. They can get into the little crevices and up the places where all the grasses and some of the weeds are growing, where cattle won't do that as much. It's also really entertaining to watch the lambs on the rocks, because they'll run up and down and you can see how agile they are and how equipped they are at maneuvering in tight and rocky spaces. So Rosie's going to give us a good example of that right now. And so Rosie looks very different from the sheep behind her or in the rest of the pen. And that's not just because she's a baby, it's because she's a haired sheep. So she is a Mouflon black belly cross. And so those are two breeds of hair sheep, where the sheep behind us and in the rest of our pen are wool sheep. So they're two different varieties within the sheep species. So you have your hair and you have your wool sheep. And hair sheep are not needed, they don't need to be sheared, so they naturally shed. Kind of like dogs or horses in a way. So their maintenance as far as their yearly upkeep is a little bit less than it is for wool sheep. And Rosie is our neighbor's lamb. So his ewe had twins, but unfortunately she didn't have enough milk to feed both lambs, which occasionally does happen. And he's busy working, so he asked if we could bottle feed her for him. And so we're doing that, and she'll go back to him at the end of the summer, or sort of once she's done bottle feeding. And once the ewes have their lambs, she'll be put in this pen so she can have a bit more space to run around and interact with the other lambs. So she's looking at the grass. She's kind of nibbling away at it. It's the same thing with the hay. The green grass is definitely more attractive than the hay at this time of year. But for the lambs, anything new and different is always worth a nibble. And as I get down closer, Lizzie's right there, and she tries to kind of get in the way of the camera. So we're going to see if we can get Lizzie to do some tricks for us. She doesn't do many. She'll sit. Good girl. Lie down. Good girl. Oh, and roll over is never really one that we have to teach her. She's very good at that. She enjoys the additional scratches and the extra attention to her belly. She's a very active dog at night, as Great Pyrenees usually are, since they're busy checking the perimeter of their guarded area. So they'll sleep a bit more through the day, maybe look a bit lazy, but they can spring into action very quickly and do their job very effectively. So she's an excellent guard dog and a just excellent dog all around. She's lovely to be around, and she just loves attention, loves people, and interacts so well with the animals. And she still has a lot of learning to go through, as she's only just a puppy. Or, well, she's not really a puppy anymore. She's over a year. but still sometimes acts like one. And last year at this time, we had her for a month, so everything was brand new. She was just about the same size that the lambs were. So it was quite interesting to have one fluffy thing and another fluffy thing.